Hello and welcome to the Say It Sister podcast. I'm Lucy and
I'm Karen, and we're thrilled to have you here. Our paths crossed years ago on a shared journey of self-discovery, and what we found was an unshakable bond and a mutual desire to help others heal and live their very best lives.
For years we've had open, honest and courageous conversations, discussions that challenged us, lifted us and sometimes even brought us to tears. Now we want to share those conversations with you. We believe that by letting you into our world, you might find the courage to use your voice and say what really needs to be said in your own life.
Whether you're a woman seeking empowerment, a self-improvement enthusiast, or someone who craves thought-provoking dialogue, join us as we promise to bring you real, unfiltered conversations that encourage self-reflection and growth.
So join us as we explore, question and grow together. It's time to say it, sister. Welcome to week 3 of the Goddess Month. This week we are going to explore those crossroads that we often find ourselves on. They can happen daily, they can happen at monumental times in our lives where we are hesitant. We don't know which path to take, whether to go forth, take sidewards, or literally just stay still. Each option will take us somewhere new. It will mean saying yes to something, but it will also mean having to say no to something or even grieving something. We can be guided by fear, resistance to change, desire for stability, or this week we are saying choose with courage and heart. So it's time to introduce you to the goddess of Crossroads. This is Hecate, or Hecate as I like to call her, and she shows up in lots of different ways. She is an old and ancient goddess. I've actually got her tattooed on my arm as the triple goddess, ruler of earth, sea and the universe, the maiden, the mother, the crone. She governs the darkness and the underworld, accompanied by her hounds, and I've got two, so often I summon that energy. And she is asking us to question our choices and take responsibility. She shows us our shadows, our darkness, and because of that, she has been adopted as the god of witchcraft. Now, we all know that choice creates endings as well as new beginnings. Which one you choose, which path to take, which way will you go? The choice truly is yours. And sometimes I do think we forget that we always have a choice. Sometimes you need to go to the darkness to really see the truth. And from this place, you can choose to fly free. So, Karen, who is Hecate to you?
For me, it's this idea of crossroads is so powerful in my life because I feel like I'm at crossroads all the time. You know, times of choice can be difficult because we don't want to make the wrong decision. And it's this idea of taking that leap of faith. Sometimes there's many choices that we can make as well. So that can be quite a confusing state. And I feel like sometimes we can get into this sort of resistance to the choice. We put things off. Things can feel really overwhelming. And it kind of like feels like we were in a no-win situation. So for me, when I think about her, I think about the courage. I think about the willingness to sort of not worry too much about right and wrong, but to just follow what feels like the rightful thing to do. I am actually a believer. If you really don't know something, that you should wait a little bit longer, so don't rush out there if you're not 100% sure. So then seek to, get into the right space so that you can make a choice and make a decision. Because ultimately, we do have to move through thresholds. I think midlife is the ultimate threshold that we face, because we've spent so much of our life learning, having experiences. We reach this midlife stage and it feels like it's a huge threshold because we're actually passing through this gateway into our elder years, but we're not quite there yet. So there's a lot of preparation that's going on. There's a lot of like sensing and feeling into and thinking, well, what's happening to my body right now? How do I feel right now? What's not working for me anymore? That's all part of this preparation. So when we get to the final threshold in midlife, we can just walk through. So that's what's coming up for me. Quite a lot as always, but what's coming up for you?
I've been at a crossroads in the last couple of years in terms of my career. And I've sometimes been frustrated with myself for not having the answers or not having the courage to just say, just pick this, just do that. And a lot of the people who are on my most recent trainings cohort, they like, oh, Lucy, you're so brave. You just went out there and did that. And I'm like, yeah, because I always have to have some action, but I haven't made the choice. I haven't firmly committed. And that is when I know something is telling me, not yet, not now. And so, therefore, what I do is I go and get more information. It might be, like I said, I went on a course, or I might go and talk to some mentors. I might talk to my coach. I might literally just sit with it to try and get the signals. What is it that's not right? And so that's where I think I sit in that darkness and I allow myself to really be there, like, what isn't feeling compelling? What doesn't feel safe for me? So it's not through fear, it's a place of sitting and just exploring. And then I know, because again, it's happened many times before, going back to Sophia with the wisdom piece, that when the time is right, there is nothing going to stop me. It'll be like, my hounds are dragging me to the place that I need to be. So that's where I use that energy, and it's a new thing for me, and it's yeah, it's strange, but it's this stillness. It feels like a little bit like hibernation, and Hecate, she's all about the darkness, so I'm embracing her.
And it's this void piece, isn't it? Because this is something that I have definitely struggled with in my life, where I've been like, I need to do something. I'm not happy with where I'm at. But it's like stepping into something that feels like a void is not, I don't think it's a natural human thing that we do. It's also not a nature thing as well, to be honest. Because we want to hold on to what we've got because we're scared that if we let that go, then we'll have nothing. It's like,
Yeah.
let's just keep this with us because we've got this in our hands and we know it and we know it really well and we've, got really good at dealing with it. However, it's not serving us to move forward. And it's that bit when you go, okay, I'm going to put that thing down. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to, walk away. And then what? What happens next? And I like it for me, it was like I went up to the Kildare forests, and I did like a couple of days of training with an elder we met a couple of years ago. And I was like, when she said to me, can you do like a circle and put down what you're doing in your life and, give it sort of a percentage type thing, a bit like a pie chart. And I looked at this piece of paper and I just went into almost like, I don't even know what happened, like a whole shutdown when I had to start putting things on paper. And she was like, what's happening to you? And I was like, I can't think straight. Um, she was like, so she said, just tell me what you're doing. So she started writing it down on this piece of paper. And I was like, I feel panicked. She said, there's way too much on this piece of paper, number one. um, she was like, how much of this is filling you with joy? And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, it feels very heavy, hence why I was having this response. And she was like, you can say no to all of this and start again. And I was coaching at the time. So I was like, doing my circles and my women's circles and my courses. So I had a lot going on. And I looked at this piece of paper and I just thought, I have to let it go. I just knew instinctively that it was time. But the fear of doing it was really, really huge, actually, because I was like, well, I spent ages building this, so why would I let it go? So I did. That's what I did. And she said to me, space is friendly. And I've never forgotten that line. It was like, yes, space is friendly. And now I'm somebody who's so much more spacious and so much more conscious. And having a child has made me so as well, because I'm like, I can't put too much in because I just don't have the capacity for that. So I'm very, very conscious about what comes in. Whereas before I was like, yeah, sure, easy come, easy go. And I would just, I can create things easily. So it's not an issue for me, but I create too much. So I
Mm.
think that was the thing for me. It was like to say no to something, to let go of things that you've worked hard for, to start over in a new guise. Yet you're not really starting over because you're taking everything that you've learned. It's all inside you. That those
You're
experiences
building on.
inside you.
Yeah. And I think it's like I always see it as like the stratosphere, that there are layers, and you can't reach to the next layer until you've completed that one. But you've still got all of the essence. So whether it's the what's under the surface of the soil that you stand on, and then you build a house and then move upstairs. And, it's that cycle that we go on. And in the moment, well, I do a tarot as a daily practice anyway, and often it's just a card of the day just to give me some clarity, and then I journal around it. But when I'm really stuck in a void or stuck at a crossroads and I truly don't know which way to go, I will do a tarot spread, and it always gives me great insight. And whether you believe in the tarot or not, getting a visual aid as information will always tap into your subconscious and tell you something or give you new information. But what fascinates me is that if I stay stuck at this crossroads for some time and I'm doing the tarot, I often keep getting the same card coming up again and again. And it's only when I release or I'm ready to let go of something to move forward that that card stops visiting me. That I have no understanding of why that happens, but I just trust that it does. But I use it as a tool, just tapping into something. So some people use pendulums, some people use oracle cards, some people just sit on a hillside and look out at the view. Whatever it is, it's about going into your subconscious and really trying to understand what is it that I need. And on that day, it was a piece of paper and getting words out. And that was the thing but you needed a guide to take you through it, didn't you?
Sure. And I think it's just like trusting that we know when something is too much, or we know when something's dead, like it's over, it's done. We know that. And it's just sometimes it's like someone's, as a coach or a guide, like you said, someone holds your hand and just say, this isn't, if I'm having a response like that where I'm totally blank and I'm like in panic, that's inside my body. Nobody's putting that in me. It's inside me. So therefore, how do I want to move forward? From what place? It's certainly not what I'm going for in the world. I'm going for spreading love, engagement, positive energy. So if I'm feeling that on the inside, then that energy is what's coming out of me as well.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, and all of your clients will have been sensing it. Yeah. And one of the things that also comes up to me with Hecate is this culmination of the mother maiden crone, or the universe, the seas, the earth, and bringing it all together. That knowing that it might be head, heart, and soul, but it's making these decisions just not with one part of information. And I always used to say to my clients very early on that you decide with the heart and you plan with the head, because just tapping into one entity, or one aspect of yourself, is only going to give you one part of the information. You need all of your full self to come together to really make truly the best decision. And as we've shared on other podcasts about pivotal moments in our lives, they kind of happen after a period of being at crossroads. Like, is it this way? Is it that way? Should I stay? Should I go? Is it this career or is it not? Until something happens and you can't stop it. It just blurts out of your mouth. And it's almost like when your head, heart, and soul are all completely aligned, there is nothing stopping you consciously. It comes out of your subconscious and you just blurt out the words. And that's definitely what happened with my two major relationships in my life. I didn't see it coming. Well, I did, but I hadn't planned today's the day I'm going to end it. And you said the same about that relationship you had, with that international relationship. You just had it one day and the words just came out and they said, I know.
It's amazing, isn't it? But that's there. See, this is the thing for me that midlife is bringing more to the forefront, and certainly it's Hecate energy of just saying stuff and then letting go, as opposed to trying to explain it or rationalize it inside myself first and then to other people. It's just like, just say it, let go, see what the other person wants to say back to you, see if they feel the same. Perhaps you are literally alleviating them from something that they have been scared to say for a long time. I certainly feel like I have definitely become more of that person in my relationships, and sometimes the force of it kind of comes out of me and I just think, oh my God, who am I these days? And sometimes I think the thing that I'm learning to manage, and I still have work to do, is that it comes from more of a gathered place rather than an angry place, because I do find that sometimes when I speak, I've just had enough. And so it comes out, and the words would be the same, to be honest. It's not like I would change my
Different
words,
energy with it though.
but the actual energy behind it is more like sheer frustration. Um,
Mm.
and when that lands on someone, it's not nice, it's not a nice experience. So that's the bit where I am, you know, conscious, working on. And I think the only way you can do that is to catch it earlier. When that first feeling of frustration comes up, something's just not working, and it's not working, being willing to sort of be brave and say, hey, this isn't working for me. Is it working for you? What I would like to see is more of this, less of that, you know, and catching it before it comes out as like, will you just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
And I've noticed in this midlife phase as well is that my reactions um are definitely influenced by my emotions, which are definitely influenced by the moon cycles and the feminine cycles that we go through. Because sometimes I can just be that calm person and have that conversation because all that I think is by having that conversation, it just takes you to the next crossroads. And then you're like, oh, I'm further down this path. And now which way do I go? Whereas when I'm in that rage or frustration, and I can feel it, I know what it feels like, but sometimes I can't control it. And yeah, it takes you down a path that you're like, oh, I didn't want to be here. And whether you're in conflict or you created more tension, yeah. But the beautiful thing is when you recognize that you can always bring yourself back to the path or revisit the crossroads and say, okay, let's redesign this and go back there. What I see a lot of foolish people doing is just still plowing down that road regardless because they can't admit that they got it wrong.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting for me, when I have that frustration and I move from it, people actually like it. This is the weird thing, because I'm quite a calm, gentle soul in my essence. But if I'm fired up by something, they're like, more of that, please. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yes, more of that. Like, that's when you are truly alive. So it's an interesting one for me. It's something that I have to play with quite a lot. And to actually choose to be more dangerous has been something that I've been working with since 2015. It came out that because I am very much like I love beauty and I love softness, and I'm now doing all this with my hands and aesthetical beautiful things and the good feelings. But actually I've had to learn to be more dangerous, to be more like willing to sort of like use my sword of truth, which is definitely the Hecate. It's like, sword of truth, here you go, deal with that. This is for you to work with me on, and that fire is very, very powerful. So I'm constantly sort of like realigning with it. But what I don't want to do is to I don't know how to put it into words. It's like I still want to be refined with it, I think is what I'm trying to say,
Mm.
like a level of refinement that I
And
think
that
practice.
comes with that wisdom.
Yeah.
Because you'll probably make a lot of mistakes until you have refined it. This is how I show up, and there's something there about the hounds element because I think I've shared I've got two rescue dogs, and one always walks on the right, and the other one always walks on the left. And it's like sometimes I feel like this amazing chariot woman, with my hounds guiding me, and they both give me real strength, but one of them is just. And I see her as the light side of the feminine. She is all hugs and she's just delighted to see everyone. And she sees a bee and she starts dancing around it. And the other one is definitely the dark side of it. And if she doesn't like something, she is going to snap, she is going to bark, she is going to lunge, and so it's about that balance. And sometimes I find myself lunging because I'm like, you can't say that. And I had an experience over the Christmas period where unfortunately a male in my social circle has been um, going down that toxic masculinity algorithm and was saying some very, very toxic things. And I was with my daughters, and he was just being racist. And I was like, I have a decision to make now about whether, because I could feel the rage coming in. And I was like, I have a decision to make. Do I stay silent to keep the peace at this party? Or do I role model to my daughters that it is safe to call it out? And I did. I said, your language is racist. He's like, you're calling me a racist. And I was like, yes, because the words that you are saying are racist. and I don't like them and I don't want them. And he walked out. He couldn't deal with my energy because I was so boundaried and strong that, yeah, and actually, I think he thought that he could influence the room, and I called him out on it. And I don't know where this is going to take me from
Yeah.
now. I have thought about reaching out to him to having a very open conversation, to see, where this is coming from, or do I just keep doing my work and going forward? So there's another one of those little crossroads that come up all the time. Which
Yeah,
part
that's
do I take?
amazing. And thanks for sharing that because it's bringing something up my side, which as these conversations always do. I feel like there's a lot goes on in what's in like the WhatsApp sort of circles where, things start to leak through and, you negative comments or that kind of thing, can live in the space, it's on our phones and we have a choice whether we want to participate. I've also learned that you can leave things without just by saying I'm out of this space, you're kind of calling it out. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
point in time when we can go, hey, that's not appropriate. I'm letting you know that's not appropriate. And there are other times when you can just go, just leave, get out of there. You don't need to say anything because your absence will be noted. And
Yeah.
then the message comes through. So I've just recently done that on a WhatsApp group where um I could feel that number one, I felt the energy was becoming very negative, and number two, there'd been a couple of like negative comments that were quite aggressive, as well. And I just thought, I don't need to do this. I don't need to, and yeah, so there you go. I'm out. And then I know that my absence has been noted. So the message is whatever the message they want to make into it is up to them. But like I've made my statement without making the statement because that felt appropriate in this situation. In other situations, I'll call it out. But yeah, so we have so many different options in terms of how we want to respond to something that is not right. When we hit that crossroads stage, and I think saying no, letting go, it takes many different forms, doesn't it? So I just wanted to say that if there's anyone listening and you're in similar situations where you just think you'll know it because you'll feel it in your body when the messages come through. That's the first sign. Number two, so then you're at the crossroads, and then number two, it's a case of how can I respond to this? You might want to say something, you might just want to leave. Either way, good choices to make.
And there is nothing stopping you leaving at that moment and then revisiting it when you're more centered.
Yeah,
And I've done that a number of times professionally, that it is not the right time or space to name something. And I may have physically left, or you can physically see my body language is switched off. And then either later that afternoon or the next day, I've then addressed it with the individual and just said, um, I don't like that, or I didn't appreciate that, or what was going on with you in that moment, just to start the conversation up. But again, that there are so many options, and that's why I said right at the start, these crossroad moments happen almost all the time within your life, whether you've got somebody doing road rage in the car park, or stealing your spot, or being mean to your child, or trying to draw you into gossip. And you get to choose, do I do this or do I not? As well as some of the really big things. But what I also know to be true is how you show up in those small moments is a reflection of how you'll deal with the bigger moments.
of
So it's almost like training.
course it is. Of course it is. Let's talk about actual examples of crossroads that we've experienced. Tell us one of yours.
So I talked previously about a toxic relationship that I was in, and I'd physically left the relationship in, well, the home, because it was too toxic. And for the month while we were moving out, he refused to speak to me, refused to engage, until it was like on the very day we were leaving, he decided that was when he was going to start packing his stuff. But so it was really toxic. But I was totally in survival mode at that stage. And then turns out that actually, once I actually did the deed and I left the home, he then started coming back into our lives. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let's see where this is and what's going on. And after about 4 months, I was lying in bed next to him, and I had this moment. I woke up maybe about 2:30 in the morning with this crystal clarity of, I cannot do this anymore. And it was that proper crossroads moment. Do I just lie here and wait till the morning, um, pretend and just see where this goes, or do I say something now? And I couldn't help it. I just said at that moment, I can't do this anymore. And with that, he woke up, he put his clothes on, and he left. And that
Wow.
was the end of it. It was as simple as that. There was no turmoil. There was nothing going, no arguments in the middle of the night. And I think it was because, again, I summoned that energy, that inner power. But it was that real crossroads moment. But the journey to that crossroads wasn't easy. It
Yeah.
had taken months to get there. But at that crisis moment in the middle of the night, there was I had absolute certainty which path I was going to take.
I
What
think
about you?
yeah, no, and as well, just to say that, when you're in that place where it's so clear, people generally speaking just know to walk away, to give up,
Yeah.
because there's just no going back. And I think it comes out of us. And again, like the words that we use may be exactly the same, yet the space that we use them from changes how they land on somebody
Yeah.
else. And I know that is true. Like you can say something that's really harsh, but if you say it from the heart, they're gonna feel the essence of the heart in the words. That's what you hope anyway, and 9 times out of 10 they do.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's because they've got something running themselves. So I want to, that's a really brave thing to do, actually, especially in the middle of
Oh,
the night when everything seems so much worse, because that's always the time, isn't it, when it's
I'm so proud of myself.
outside.
And that's where, when I was talking about courage, about wisdom, it's like I've been here before and um, I've tried and tested and made mistakes. And I know that in those really critical moments, I can advocate for myself and I can make decisions that are true for me. And life is good. And so I'm really proud of myself. It was a pivotal moment that I'll remember for the rest of my days.
Hmm. My experience is a bit lighter than that. And it was a couple of years ago, I went off to do a training, and it was held by an amazing couple, American couple called the Keeneys, Bradford and Hillary Keeney. And well, I don't even know how to describe them, but they are the most amazing people who are scholars. They've written numerous books, but they wrote a book called Sacred Ecstatics that was really, I don't even know how to describe it, and I'm not even going to try to that, and that's what I'm deciding. But it's very much around getting into the heart, shaking everything up, um, you know, shaking everything off in a way so that we can be really central inside our hearts and let our hearts lead us as opposed to our heads. So that's a very raw way of saying it. Um, and I read this book and I did all the practices from the book, because like, when I love something, I really love it. And I really, like you read books, self-help books, and this isn't a self-help book. It's much more than that. Read this book and I'm literally like, right, I'm going to go do that exercise. I'm going to do that exercise. So I'm like reading the chapters, doing the exercises. And so I'm fully engaged. And then they came to Norfolk. And so I went to this amazing place in Norfolk and, walked into this room, didn't know anybody. And there were all these chairs were set up, and Brad is a classically trained musician, like pianist. So he was on the piano, playing some things, and it was like beautiful, like the music was amazing and all of that. So I'm getting into my body a bit. And then they start to tell a story. And I like looking around, everyone's got their eyes closed. There was no introductions, no nothing. So it was literally like in this room. And so I closed my eyes and I was thinking, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm just going to stay here inside myself and follow whatever happens. The nearest I can describe it is like a visualization experience, but again, it was more than that. And they started to talk about coming to a spiritual crossroads, and this idea that you're at the crossroads and you have choices, and will you move through or will you stay? And I don't even know what they were saying, to be honest, but I literally went somewhere, like I left my body, and I'm not joking, it was absolutely wild. I felt myself leave my body. I was sober. It was in the middle of the daytime. I was like, what is happening? And I just felt this feeling of intense love. I've never, childbirth is near to it, but it was beyond that because it was just so pure. There was no pain involved at all. And I was just in this space and I was like, what's this? Like, there's a part of me that was asking, like, what is going on here? Like, that rational part of my brain was definitely awake, but it was more powerful than that. So I was like, somewhere else, I just felt all this joy and my body started to shake. So my whole body was shaking. I don't even know what I must have looked like. It didn't really matter because no one actually cared. Eyes closed. I've never felt anything like it. It was beyond anything that I've ever experienced before. And then I almost like felt my ego sort of kind of get really, really strong and sort of pull me back down. I'm curious to know where that would have taken me. But my body was so alive, for probably about a year after that. And something was happening in the core of me in my stomach where I would think something and my stomach would like do something that was like, I can't even describe it. It was so powerful, I can't describe it. I don't think I'm meant to describe it in words. It just totally blew me open, and from that place, I went off and did lots of amazing things. It was very, very, very powerful. And the energy that was given out was very powerful, and it was different to something I'd ever experienced before. And I knew that, like, for me, it was like this idea of leaving something behind and going to a higher place, if I could give it a term. That higher place is always going to be unconditional love. So I'll never forget that, especially because, so many people go off on these spiritual tourism adventures where they take ayahuasca or they might do some mushrooms. Back in our day, it was like, alcohol and ecstasy, or maybe not mixed together, but you know what I mean? And it was pure because there was nothing like that involved, just purely being in the space and allowing myself to be free, I think. So that's a huge thing. It's something I'll never understand it. Yet it was a massive experience and it changed me. Yeah.
Wow. My best friend had discovered the work of the breath work, and she had a very, very similar experience. And she basically described it almost in exactly the same way as you, but her conclusion was that during this moment, she had let go of something. That all of that was just, it was like processing it and getting it out of her cells and out of her bones. And when she came back and returned to herself, she was like, right, I'm ready to move forward now. And it's sometimes we do have to let go or grieve or um, say, I am saying no to this before we can move forward, because otherwise we are dragging all that baggage along the road. And, I was visualize myself when I'm feeling trapped or constrained of having like shackles on and I'm dragging the shackles behind. And so whatever it was that you had to release to be able to move forward, once it was gone, wow, you transcended. And I get a similar feeling when I do some shamanic drums.
Mm.
And it's usually like the really deep drums, that deeper frequency does something within me, and it always gets me incredibly emotional, that something just bursts out of me. But again, and you don't have to name the thing that you're letting go of, because sometimes it's just a release, and then again you're just free, and then you're ready to let go and move forward. And when I talk about, when I made that crisis decision, it felt like I was letting go. And that was like the end of that 7 year cycle. And I was ready to move on to the next one. And it took me somewhere completely different. And that is the power of going with your truth at a crossroads moment. And that's where Hecate is really powerful, because she makes you look at that darkness within, so that you can just release it or forgive yourself, whether it's the guilt or the shame, whatever it is, you've got to let it go to truly move forward. And I think that's why people are afraid to go there, and it just keeps them stuck.
And it's a cultivating of the feelings as well, because the reason I ended up getting this book and reading the book and going to the workshop was because what had started to happen to me was I was going into nature. And when I would stand in nature, my body started moving, just naturally moving. And it was like, whoa. And I'd done a visualization actually as part of my CTI training, leadership training. And it was like closing your eyes, being in nature, and then connecting to different realms ultimately. And the same thing happened. So something was starting to move inside of me. Nature became this anchor where I could just go into nature, close my eyes, standing up, I would stand up and my body would start to just naturally be moved. And it didn't feel like I was going to fall over. It didn't feel dangerous. It was like just organic movement and my body being held in something and responding. Because ultimately, if you think about our bodies, we are not static. We are full of movement and we are full of elements and flow. And that's why sitting for too long and not moving is so bad for us, because we're not supposed to, we're supposed to be moving, we're supposed to be walking, we're supposed to be, yes, we need time to rest for sure, to recover, to then go out and be part of the world and the universe that we used to be. Now we're in little boxes, stuck in, yeah, we're in boxes, aren't we? And so
Yeah.
anything that breaks us out of that gets us back into our natural state, which is much more movement based and flow, is going to be really, really good for us. So that's how it happened. It was like a chain of events that took me to this space, that opened things up for me in so many different ways. And I suppose there's a part of me that's like, I want more of that. Like, I want, when you think Crossroads and you think of Hecate, it's like, it does feel quite dark. Yeah, she's not alone. She's got a walking stick and a staff that like keeps her solid, that's probably got magic in it. And the hounds around her, which are scent dogs, which I find in the path, so they're smelling things out and they're guiding her. So she's not alone, and neither are we. And there is something in us that if we just do one thing at a time, like each step on that crossroads to take us through it is going to take us somewhere. I'm going to actually show the picture because I have her here in front of me. And it is the dark of night, and it can be, that would, just feel a little bit scary, but in reality, she's also surrounded by light around her, the light of the moon probably, and to not be so worried about it, and to just, as two women who are now older, to say, trust the process and trust yourself and trust your body and trust where it's being called, because that deep wisdom that's inside of you is going to break you free.
And one of the other symbols that we haven't discussed is that the key is another one of her symbols. And in a lot of witchcraft, on the night of Hecate, you go and place an old key at a crossroads. But the symbolism of it is that you always hold the key
I love
to
that.
whatever the path is that you're taking. You can unlock it.
Can we do that together soon? Can we? It might not
Yes,
be,
let's do
it
it.
might not be on the like day of like, her official day, but we are meeting up this week.
Yeah.
Let's bring two keys and let's find a place and let's do that.
Love that
Conscious
idea.
about
Yes.
it. I'm all about that. I feel like it's amazing to receive information. It's amazing, there's so many things that you can read. You could go read Sacred Ecstatics if you want to know more about Crossroads, or get some oracle cards. You'll get, there'll be books out there, I'm sure, about, there's a book that you've mentioned before.
I was just going to share one that for anybody that's starting on their divine feminine, or raising their frequency of their feminine energy, there is a brilliant book that I bought a couple of years ago called Goddess Wisdom. And it's got loads of exercises, and it's in 3 parts, and it's from a wonderful woman called Tanishka. And it's almost like an entry level version of how to get on this path. And it taught me so much, because although you've been working with goddesses for many years now, Karen, I feel like I'm a bit of a newbie, because I'm only just stepping out of the masculine energy world that I've been conditioned into. And so we're both at different points in our journeys, but we both know this innate truth. And so yeah,
we're
go
both
read, go
teachers.
explore. Yeah.
We're both teachers and we're both students, and it's always going to be like that. It's never going to change. And I feel like for me, the key is to get practical and actually
You got that key again.
yeah, the key is to get practical. I'm going to keep saying that, because without doing the practices and the processes, and like, like we're going to do, like put the key at a crossroads, we'll mark out what crossroads we're on, and then because we'll get conscious about it, and then we can do that exercise. Without doing that, you're still in the realm of the intellectual. You're still in the realm, it's not embodied, it's not coming through you, you're not physically doing it. So please get into action is my top tip for this. Don't just read it and then go, that was interesting, and then put the book down. Do something about it. What's your tip?
My tip is pay attention to the light and the dark. Just like my 2 dogs pulling me, they give me information. Don't be afraid to look at what scares you or what stirs you, because that's the work you need to do to truly move forward.
Ah, beautiful. Well, I'm going to keep this short and sweet, wrapping up. I just want to say the key is to get practical. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've loved this conversation, and we'll speak to you soon.
So thanks for listening, and we can't wait to welcome you next time.
Until then, use your voice, journal, speak or sing out loud. However you do it, we hope you join us in
Saying It Sister.